Welcome back to Monday Night Football. We continue our series of going behind the scenes at professional football clubs and just finding out more about other elements of the game. Tonight we are live to London with James Collins, who is the nutritionist for Arsenal Football Club. He's also worked with the England Olympic squad and the England national football team. James, thank you so much for joining us on Monday Night Football. What does your job actually entail?
Hi Julia, thanks. I guess my role is to work with the footballers at the clubs. So it's to try and affect their health and ultimately their performance. So I think really, if we were talking 10 years ago, nutrition in football's changed quite a lot now. And that might really be the influence of some of the Olympic sports. But when we're working with elite players now, it's very much we're working with key themes for them. So for example, the key themes I would work with elite players would be fueling, just to ensure they've got the energy for match play. Recovery now is a really big one, just because in major tournaments, and now with Champions League, we've got less and less recovery time. So we're trying to do everything we can using nutrition to reduce soreness and getting players back. And I guess the last one primarily, which is one that you'd always typically think of a nutritionist for, is body composition. In every player over the last 10 years, in every squad, we've got players who would struggle to manage their weight with their body fat. So that's always an issue for us, but we monitor players very closely. And so we have players that might need to manage their weight. But actually, more often than not now, because of the amount of fixtures we're playing, we have some players that might under-recover, and we actually might need to make sure they recover okay and manage their weight from the other end and maintain the muscle mass.
James, you touched on the fact that nutrition has changed quite a lot. We all know the story about the Arsenal players when Arsene Wenger came in and revolutionised the way they were eating, chanting on the bus to Blackburn, "We want our Mars bars." Just how much has it changed compared to when he first came in and then to now? Kind of give us an idea of what a pre-match meal might have been then and now.
So I think more globally, I think our attitude towards nutrition has changed, and you summarised it then, whereas before we would have looked at food and junk food would have been okay. I think now with nutrition and football, we're looking at it in a really targeted way. So, for example, if we're looking at how we prepare for a match, each player is looking at how they fuel and how much carbohydrate they need before the match to make sure they've got sufficient energy. So, for example, if we're looking at how a match might be, a pre-match meal would be served, it's always served buffet style. So we might have 3 or 4 different carbohydrates for players to choose from to see which ones actually suit them. Because we all know, actually, pre-match, psychology comes into things as well. And actually, you want players to go in fueled, but actually to know that they've got foods that they trust and they feel prepared as well. So that's a really big element. So the big thing for us pre-match is to fuel players, but also to give them options so that they know that when they step across the line, you know, they're set and they're ready to go.
James, I've got a question for you. While I ask you this question, I'm going to specifically put on my thin profile Ivan Lendl look, just for a moment. So you might have to help me personally with the nutrition, but it's a serious question I want to ask you. And this is something the other day I was working on with a bunch of coaches in a coaching clinic, and they were saying that elite athletes are one thing, but a lot of high schools or universities are getting young players, and already they have bad habits. They've got a history of bad eating. So how do we start, not only at your level, at elite level, but as human beings, making sure that the children eat properly at primary school levels or junior school levels?
Do you know, I think that's a really valid point, and it's something we're really addressing here in the UK at academy level now as well. And I think actually it does start from children, and it starts from the education. So for example, when we're working with our academy players, actually the primary source of education for them, the primary touch point is the parents. So any education sessions we do are involving the parents as well, and enabling them just not which foods will work, but actually to give them a thorough understanding of nutrition. And it starts off at a basic level, but if with these building blocks during players when they're young, we can give them introduction to nutrition, and then slowly we can use those examples and build on them and look at how we can fuel for training and recover. Slowly, actually when they reach first team level, we've then got players who have got a level of education that we can work with at the elite end. But you're absolutely right, these building blocks start in the academy, and it's absolutely crucial. Especially, as we said before, in this modern game now, where the demands on players are only going to increase, the physiological demands on them only increase, so we need them to be really aware of their nutrition and to know how to apply it, and that starts when they're young.
James, I know you don't want to speak specifics, but Arsenal have been known to have a lot of injuries, and there are a couple of players like Walcott, like Wilshere, like Ramsey, who every season are seeming to get injuries. How much does nutrition play in terms of strengthening them for the future and in their recovery? And what about supplements, maybe for the bones or something like that?
So I think with injuries in general, obviously good nutrition principles play a part for any athlete. So we obviously try to ensure, whether these are footballers or Olympic athletes, that players are well fueled and they don't have any insufficiencies in their diet. So actually, by having these core principles in place, we're trying to help make players more robust as well. And that obviously goes alongside their training. And I think more globally, nutrition really fits into this overall program. And this is actually a really important point, that within a club, we've got physiotherapy, we've got strength and conditioning, and nutrition fits into that integral part. So nutrition really should marry the physical demands that are happening during training as well.
Hi, James. Sean Bartlett. I've just got a question and maybe a little bit of clarity from your side regarding energy drinks like Red Bull, because I know some players actually like having them before a game because they think it's going to give them an extra boost. But I honestly think it also, as much as give you a boost for a short time, it can bring you down very quickly. What do you think about these energy drinks?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Sean. And actually, energy drinks within football and within Olympic sports as well, we've tried to really educate players into their use. So what we would say is, actually, if a player is interested in using an energy drink, we would sit down with them and say, what are the core components we're looking for from the energy drink? It might be carbohydrates. More often than not, it's a dose of caffeine with the energy drink. So what we try to do with the player is educate them and say, actually, as opposed to just looking at the energy drink, can we use other sources to get the caffeine and the carbohydrates from? And actually, how much is right for that player? Because as you just mentioned, Sean, you might have one player who's taken 2 cans of energy drink, and a smaller player, a striker, who might weigh 65 kilograms, who's taken the same dose, and they respond very differently to those. So my role as a nutritionist is to get the player, to test the player, and to get the player to understand pre-match, what do they need for energy, and what are the different sources they can get it from as well, because some players might prefer a drink. And now, for example, the technology's moved on in recent years, and we've got really good gels that players might take at half-time. So it's almost taking back a step with the player and saying, OK, what are we looking to target? And then are there different ways that we can get these as well? And the last point with that, Sean, as well, it's just really looking at for them to try that in training as well. And so they're trying it in a safe environment, so know when they're stepping out on match day, everything's under control and everything's been trialled as well.
Brilliant.
James, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure having you on Monday Night Football, and good luck for the season.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Julia. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks very much,
James Collins, the Arsenal nutritionist.